And we're going to our second topic here, and it's DeMarcus Cousins. Shocker, he's in trade rumors again, mainly because the Kings are terrible, and we're constantly talking about DeMarcus Cousins.
They've got 5 centers.
Don't worry about it. They don't know what they're doing up there in Sacramento. But
the resurgence of, or the first surgence of Papa John's. I said resurgence, and I'm like, wait,
it's not a resurgence.
You would have to be there.
You'd have to surge first.
That's why I'm saying a first surge.
Emergence.
There we go.
Again, Ricky making up words.
Yeah, I'm not good with words.
The walking thesaurus.
Played 6 minutes, got a bucket, and he's got a negative per. But
does anyone in? Come on,
the Kings. We're talking DeMarcus Cousins here, and DeMarcus Cousins. There's obviously talks of like when he'll be traded. We did one 6 months ago, a topic on where DeMarcus Cousins will go. He didn't go anywhere. But one thing with that is, when will he be traded? Because there's talks, and I know Ricky brought this up, that GMs around the league are saying that they should trade him as soon as possible, because when you get closer to the trade deadline, teams are going to be like, all right, well, we got here already with the team in place. I don't feel like we'll need to make a drastic move to give up a lot to bring in a guy who has known character issues and might not take our team that much or that far. So really, is now the time that DeMarcus Cousins should be traded from the Sacramento Kings?
Well, the thing is, and I was mentioning this, like you said, before we hit the record button, is when we get closer to that trade deadline, teams are going to get a little bit more iffy, because this isn't going to be a deal where it's like, oh, let's trade for DeMarcus Cousins, and if we don't like him, he's gone at the end of the year. He still has one more year left on his contract. So really, a team that's trading for Cousins is like, hey, you know what? We got to really think about this, because if we trade for him and he doesn't work out, we're stuck with him for another year. How's that going to work? And teams, as we get closer to that trade deadline, are going to think about that a little more. Right now in the season, it's still early. Everyone thinks they're a playoff hopeful team.
Except the Magic.
And then
the Sixers.
A team that I feel like the Kings could sucker a team into, hey, man, you're right. You are a playoff hopeful. Think about what you could be with Boogie.
You think the Kings are that smart?
No, but I mean, I would love to think that they would try that, because I would try that.
Your logic isn't wrong.
You would try that.
There's no arguing that.
But also you're talking about the Kings.
Vlade Divac might try that. Or might not try that.
You're talking about the Kings here that are an inept organization that think Papagiannis, and somehow they made the best pick was Scal at 28. But that trade in the draft kind of cemented where I was long when we talked about this, and I believe that was one of the first trade deadline talks we came around to, where Sacramento is oblivious to what's actually going on. Sacramento can put on and bring in a ton of players, and no matter what they do, they could bring in Matt Barnes, they could bring in Aaron Aflalo, they can bring in all of these players, but you're not going to bring a superstar or someone up to Boogie's level to play with them. And really, the one thing with that is, if you look at Charlotte, we talked about a team, and you have Kemba, and then there's that team around them, and it's who's going to step up and play with Kemba. But Kemba can do it by himself, and Boogie has proven that he cannot do it by himself, and that's really just a detriment to the position he plays, because he doesn't have the ball in his hands constantly.
Yeah, and also, I'm going to say, I'm not going to completely disagree with you when you say that the Kings are an inept organization, as I believe you just said.
I did.
But the one thing that really, with the Kings, since they got Boogie, and it's like, oh, let's build the team around Boogie.
Look at the draft.
Well, not the draft, but look at the NBA. The NBA kind of changed while they were trying to do that, because it's a guard-centric league now. It's all about the three-pointer now. If you are building a team around a big man,
you're doing it wrong.
You're in the old days.
Yeah.
You're not going to win championships if you're building around a big guy. That's why Dwight went to a team that's complete.
See, I disagree, though, because I understand where you're coming from. But the thing is that you can build a team around DeMarcus Cousins. The thing is that the Kings are inept, that they can't do it. You look at the constant slew of draft picks they've had. Ben McLemore, Nick Stauskas, Jimmer Fredette. I mean, they do not know how to draft the correct guard.
They got Isaiah and let him walk.
They did. And that's one thing, is that you can build a team around a big man. We've
even
seen
Tyreek
it before.
Evans, right? They drafted Tyreek.
They drafted Tyreek, but I believe that was before Boogie.
I know. I'm just saying, like that. So they've had talent and let them walk. And meanwhile, they're holding on to Boogie for dear life, and they can't get guys around him.
And that's the one thing, is that you say you can't build a team around a big man, but Tim Duncan proved you wrong there. And but you might say in 2014 though, I mean, Kawhi had a fantastic performance in the finals. I don't want to take around it, but the guy still there was Tim Duncan as well.
Tim Duncan though was a guy who, I mean, he came into the league when we weren't like the NBA didn't drastically change.
They still won.
Well, they had Tony Parker, they had Manu Ginobili, they then hit on a Kawhi Leonard. They had guys, and yes, they're a better organization. We're getting to that point, but
and to be fair, who's the guy who got the biggest contract coming off of that? Danny Green with the 3-point shooting. So, I mean, look, Tim Duncan was one of the last great bigs who was a centerpiece of a team, successful, but I think the real problem is the Kings organization. I'm with you, Sean. I think that Boogie could be a centerpiece to a team and be successful at it, but you need to complement that. You can't just rely solely on him and average style. You need to play like similar to the Magic did with Dwight. We need full out shooting from the perimeter, and then we'll use him.
And this is the point that I want to bring up here is the year directly after they drafted DeMarcus Cousins. It was the 2011 draft. They had the 7th overall pick.
Don't do this to me. I hate this game.
Do you want to know who they selected?
Ben McLemore?
No. Do you want to know who they selected?
This wasn't the Ben McLemore draft?
Bismack Biyombo. All right? They traded him, though. No, they traded him. They traded him. They didn't let him walk. They traded him to Charlotte. But then they traded. Milwaukee drafted Jimmer Fredette by the Milwaukee Bucks, and then that got traded to Sacramento. However, guess who the next pick was? Klay Thompson. Guess who went 15? Kawhi Leonard.
To be fair, Klay Thompson coming out of college didn't have the biggest hype. Jimmer Fredette was like, holy crap, this guy can sink it from anywhere on the court.
And maybe Klay, to remember.
And maybe Klay is the fit here, and maybe the pick of Steph Curry was like, oh, he had a fantastic tournament, was able to back it up. But one thing that I'm saying here is, when did you see Jimmer as a guy that's saying that guy is going to be an NBA superstar? When did you see that? Did you see that twinkle in his eye ever? And I'm not saying you saw that in Klay, and I'm not saying you saw that in Kawhi.
He had some magic during tournament. I'm not gonna tell you that's wrong, but yeah, I never saw him as leading a franchise.
And one thing I thought, and this was me at the time. You got to understand. I'm gonna say
it was Jimmer Nation.
Yeah, it was a young kid. I was still in high school, and I wasn't really thinking about basketball like I do now. But I mean, looking back, I remember watching, and actually, no, fuck that. That was like early college for me. I kind of looked at him as like the poor man's, at the best, and this is like the best he could have been.
Jimmer.
Poor man's JJ Redick. Like that would be a fucking Hall of Fame type career for Jimmer Fredette.
And the one thing though that I'm trying to say here is the next year, 2012, 5th overall pick, they selected Thomas Robinson, power forward, which makes no sense. You need a guard.
So hard.
Busted hard. Guess who the next pick was? Damian Lillard, right there. He had a lot of hype coming out of college. I'm just saying, constantly missing. Right after Ben McLemore, 7th overall, you had Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, you had C.J. McCollum, you had Giannis Antetokounmpo, you had Dennis Schroeder. You had so many players beyond the line here. You're never drafting a guy who was a ball handler. Jimmy was a scorer. Ben McLemore was a scorer. Tom Robinson was a power forward. You're never drafting a ball handler here. And that was the problem, is they thought they could fill that with free agency. But the thing with Sacramento is no one wants to go to Sacramento. But the reason is, the whole point of this is, when will DeMarcus Cousins be traded? And I will say, never. He will walk. Because they will never trade him.
It's a scary thought. I mean, the big thing is, yeah, you're calling them inept. You're saying they're going to waste his entire time there, and they're never going to let him go until he actually ends that contract out. It's depressing to think about, to be honest with you, because he's one of the most entertaining players in the league. Is he irrational at times? Is he hot-headed? Hell yeah. But he also brings to your team a level of passion that you don't get out of guys anymore.
Yeah.
And there's so many teams who, like Ricky said, early in the season, they're still trying to figure out, where are we at? Where do we fit on the scale? And I think there's a lot of these teams who would get a huge boost from getting someone like Boogie. Some teams like Washington, who's a bottom-of-the-barrel team who we had expectations for, you put them back together. Charlotte, another one where we talk about having Kemba, needing that too. You could put Boogie down low, and that would be an interesting tandem. Boston, God knows, we've talked deep about that.
And also, wait, real quick. It's interesting that you bring up Washington, because who would he be reunited with?
His boy Johnny Wall,
former Kentucky team.
I want to clarify though that we're just throwing out teams that could possibly fit. We're not saying teams that will actually happen. I just want to make that clear.
I'm just saying it's interesting that you bring that up, because maybe getting to a Wizards team and being reunited with Wall, hey, who knows? Maybe they say, hey, you know what? Let's work out a Beal for Cousins kind of a trade. And maybe the Wizards do that because of the rift that we see between Wall and Beal.
Yeah, and that makes total sense because, Russell Westbrook and Kevin Durant were able to make it work in Oklahoma City under Scotty Brooks. Again, remember, Scotty Brooks is a terrible head coach. That's a constant right there.
Yeah. The two other teams I had who were possibles, which one of them is kind of interesting.
Not trying to take away your point, Ricky, but I know what you're saying.
Scotty Brooks, you hate the man.
Fuck Scotty Brooks.
Yep.
My thing is Wall and Beal are not Durant and Westbrook. Yeah.
I don't know. It's been a while. Portland, another team who is struggling early on, who, again, I'm not saying how they would do it. It's just
need big help.
It would be an interesting move. The last one is the one because why not, is Toronto.
I thought you were going to say Chicago because Ricky brought up Chicago.
I'm thinking Toronto because think about it. I know Valanciunas has been playing up this year, but if you got Boogie down low, that would be a very, very hard team to beat.
It would be a hard team to beat, but then that you kind of have the who's going to be the guy. And Boogie wants to be the guy.
I don't know
DeMar
if you run
is
that problem
the guy.
DeMar is the guy, and everyone knows it this season. Like he has cemented himself.
But Boogie wouldn't take that.
It doesn't look at the stats right now for Boogie and Rudy Gay. Like they both abuse the ball. Like they are both primary dump points for the ball. The ball doesn't get past them. Mm-hmm. So I think that DeMar can play a very similar role, but only as a primary to Boogie being the secondary. And Kyle Lowry knows how to play around with that kind of talent. So I think that would be a very interesting fit, and that would put their team like top of the top.
It'd be interesting, and real quick, I think the clearest fit here is Boston because one, they have the trade pieces,
absolutely,
and two, it might be weird to see Horford and
it would
Cousins
be good to see Horford playing power forward because he's a true power forward.
But it would be weird to see that mix and see how that would work. But Ricky, when will he be traded? Is the question.
I don't think he gets traded this year. I think he's either going to. I'm leaning right now. He's either getting traded next year.
Are you seeing a Paul Gasol situation?
No, not a Paul Gasol situation. I think that next year will be the deal. He gets traded. No, not a KD.
That's what I'm saying. Is next year. He's on his last. Here's my 4-month rental.
Yeah.
Does anyone want you? I think that the Kings are going to sit there and go, no, we're not going to give him.
See, I think the Kings.
There's hope for us.
I think the Kings at that point might say, hey, you know what? Let's get something out of him.
Because they're going to be delusional and think they can re-sign him.
I don't think they will. I don't think they. I think that the Kings, although inept was a word Sean used for them, I think they would not make that big of a mistake.
I've got a question for you though. They can offer him the most money. So do you think that plays something to it? Kind of like Carmelo. Carmelo did that.
Mm-hmm. I think that plays into the Kings' delusion and thinking that they can re-sign him. Because maybe they do re-sign him. But do you know what, Boogie? That's not going to be what's best for your career. Because people will just see you as a constant crybaby, as a constant whiner. If you want to prove that you are one of the best big men in the NBA, you have to go somewhere to prove that. And Sacramento's not that place.
It's interesting that we're saying, in order to prove you're a better player, you need to get out. Because it's usually, you couldn't do it on your own. You couldn't win on your own. You're a shitty player, and you need to rely on somebody else.
Is it because he's a big guy?
But now
it's because he's a 5.
But now it's because
I think that plays into it. But I think it's also because you never have anyone near him. And I think that's
Rudy Gay, but that's totally a non-fit. I think we all know that.
Rudy Gay's overrated in my mind. And I'll say that. I don't think he's going to blow up like DeMar DeRozan. But
the Sean Jinx of the week.
One thing I do want to throw out there, and this team I'm only throwing out there because. I'm reading an article on it's the step back on Fanside, the team that you mentioned that the Celtics have assets. Well, another team that they mention that has assets, I don't really know if they make a deal for Cousins, but is Denver. Because what Denver can do, and this is the the presumed deal that could be in the package, they have a first-round pick they could offer, and then either Fareed, Gallinari, or Jokic.
Yeah, and they were
all in that package.
And they were in talks with Blake Griffin, or at least the rumors last year with Blake Griffin.
They're constant talkers. I don't know if they'll pull the trigger.
Yeah, what are your final thoughts on DeMarcus Cousins?
He's a superstar. Remember we answered that last time? 2 weeks ago we answered that.
DeMarcus Cousins. What's your final thoughts on DeMarcus Cousins?
I think early on I thought he was going to get traded, but I think you've convinced me. It's Kings ineptitude as an organization. He's going to sit there and rot.
At this point in time, I'm going to say he gets traded next season. Doesn't get traded this year. The trigger gets pulled next season.
This is what we keep saying year after year after year after year, but nothing happens.
Boogie talks never get old.
And nothing will happen. I will say that with the most conviction I have. Sacramento will continue to believe that they have a playoff team. They'll continue to draft poorly, like drafting Nick Stauskas in 2014. Again, another shooter, another scorer. Well, scorer in air quotes. Next year, they go out and draft Willie Cauley-Stein, someone who you do not need at all. And then 2016, oh, hey, who'd you draft? Papagiannis.
Willie Cauley-Stein probably is going to get traded, though.
We'll see.
I think he's the odd man out. I think there's value.
And I think there is value. And I think he's going to be a very good player, especially when he gets out of Sacramento, because Sacramento is a worthless and pathetic organization. But anyways,